All right, legends. Been having some technical issues. I'm not using proprietary YouTube stuff, so still trying to get it tweaked to work as I intend. We're close, but the tools I'm using are more advanced than the stuff YouTube gives you out of the box. So hopefully, we'll be able to get this sorted soon enough. Let's see here. All right. Let's see, you guys found me. Yeah, been having some challenge using the basic YouTube tools for my live stream. I'm using better cameras that have better resolution and so forth. I'm not using like an iPhone and that kind of basic stuff. So a lot of times we have to get things registered a certain way for the technology to work with YouTube. It's getting there. And I was using some extended cords to get everything wired. And so the connections were a little glitchy, and you don't get much support from YouTube. And being a techie, I've had to sort it out myself. But I like the tools I'm using. It gives me more flexibility. It gives you all better pictures than just using the basic camera that comes with a lot of these machines. Even though the camera on this Mac is pretty good, I like the resolution on the webcam I'm using. So it's good to see you guys here. Everybody else will catch up. The weekend's coming. Had a busy week. Really haven't been on the bike since, I guess, last weekend, the ride we did with Paul. And I think Sunday I took the day off. So I just decided to kind of make it a rest week. And I wanted to start the session talking about that, you know, if you miss training, don't fret. Don't worry about it. You know, you pretty much, you're not going to lose a whole lot by missing a few days of training here and there. You need to mostly focus on, that's what we talk about, periodization training. And so as long as you have a long-term plan, like you have a 6-week macro cycle, missing a workout here and there should not cause a lot of angst for you. You need to make sure and just realize that it's the cumulative plan that makes a difference. Not that it's beneficial for you to miss crucial workouts, but sometimes you plan and then life happens. There's not much you can do about that. So you need to kind of roll with it and then listen to how you feel when you do resume your training. Don't go full-blown top-end effort if you've been off for a while. Give your body a few workouts to get back into things. So with Saturday coming, the weather is fair this week. So I know there'll be a lot of other people out riding bikes. I'm just going to pay attention to how I feel tomorrow and probably do the usual 5 hours or so. Because Saturday we have more time for riding than during the week. It's been a pretty busy week, hectic, running around. Spring is here, so there's a lot of cleanup around the yard. You know, the clippings, the plants are growing. After that freeze, we had to cut all the dead stuff and get rid of them. So those kind of chores took up a lot of my time this week. You know, so we got Michael on here and Kjell. Yeah, I'm doing fine, Kjell. It's good to be here, be able to chat with you guys. I wanted to thank Suki Sports. Those of you who saw the video, this jersey, I've been wearing it a lot, and in fact, they liked the video, so they're sending me and Paul and I more copies of their jerseys, and I will introduce more of the jerseys to you. I really like the way they work. I like the way they fit, so I've been wearing it, and I definitely highly recommend if you want a reasonably priced, high quality jersey. That's the way to go. So they're sending 3 different copies, Suki Sports. I will put the link in the description here, but those of you who can search on the UKE Sports, find the video. There's a code there that you can use to get a discount. So I myself will use that code when I do get their stuff, but they make good stuff. And I was very pleased with the quality at this price point. Imperceptible, welcome. Victor P, how's it going? So just keep that in mind because spring is here. You're starting to ride. You're going to be getting different kit or whatever. So don't break the bank. Look for deals. And that's what I tried to do to bring to this channel. That's why I had them provide me the option of getting a discount code. So even on their sale items, you can get our discount will work. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So that's this, spring's the time you get excited, you start starting to train again, and the weather's getting a little better, especially this side of the world. So you want to make sure that you're ready, focus more on having time to ride as opposed to, tying yourself down with too much stuff. So, it's time to get the K's in and get your body back in shape. Get a plan. If you don't have a coach, get a training plan and follow that. So you're not worried about when you miss training, how your training's going. That's the biggest thing to keep in mind. See, we got 10 people here. Yeah, I kind of just, I'm going to start doing these more frequently. I'm not sure what it's going to be every Friday, but I want to do it often. Get enough questions via the website, the veloharmony.com website, and also sometimes on the channel. Questions general, yeah, that's fine. But people that need specific help, we direct them to our consulting support service. Because if you need specific help, it takes more time to really find out what's going on with you. But so these are kind of good sessions to connect, and everybody can kind of chat, see what's going on. Isaiah, who's your favorite to win the Giro? I haven't been really following the new guys that much. It depends on who's showing up. I haven't followed to see which teams are. I know that EF is sending a team there because I got an email from Rafa with the new jersey, because the Giro says you cannot wear pink when you go to the Giro. Your team kit cannot have pink, and EF's team, the EF nipple sponsor team, their jersey is pink. So they changed. They got a completely different color scheme. But I haven't followed the guys. Now, what's his name? The guy who almost won it. Well, I guess if Puchkar is there, he's a favorite, of course. You can never rule out. I don't know what kind of condition or whether Alaphilippe is going to be there or giving it, serious consideration. But Primoz, if Primoz is there, of course, the way he's been riding, and he's a good GC guy. I was a little surprised earlier in the year that, what's his name, Tom Dumoulin retired, and he had been training and he had already released his objectives, and then all of a sudden he just left the sport. So maybe he was burned out or something. It's hard to say, but it's hard to say who's going to win. It really depends on the condition they're in and who's taking the Giro seriously, because right now you cannot use the Giro for training like they used to do in the past. It's so hard. It's not like a build-up race to the Tour de France anymore. It's its own tour. Imperceptible. It is difficult to get deals right now on summer stuff. So what I do is shop for winter stuff in the summer and summer stuff in the winter. Yeah, that's always the case. And that's another reason I brought the Suki stuff, because it doesn't matter what time of year it is. That extra discount works. So it helps to take advantage of that. And you got to kind of jump on it because they run out of stuff quickly, especially the sizes mostly from medium to like XL, they sell out real quickly. Most of the vendors. So stick on a tree says, I noticed you use metric, not imperial measurement. Is this cycling culture or just habit? I use metric because most of the world uses metric. And I don't subscribe to the fact that, we take ourselves too seriously in the US. We're not the world. And most Americans have been nowhere. So they don't know about the rest of the world. I have traveled the world. It's a big world out there. 2 reasons. Most of the world uses the metric system, and only 3 countries use the imperial system. So do the math. So it's kind of like, and then our sport, cycling, primarily reports in the metric system because on that side of the world in Europe, they use the metric system. So when I got into cycling, everything was reported in kilometers. Even Velo News, our magazine here, Cycling News, Velo News, they would write these articles about the great races, and everything was in kilometers an hour. So I had to learn that. So I taught myself the conversion. And so now I can go back and forth. So I know both conversions, and it's just better to be consistent to the rest of the world. I understand the US is a big audience and everything, but we're not the world. We're a small part of the world, you know. So it's kind of like we're going with what, first of all, our sport uses, and second of all, most of the world uses. And we just need to try to accommodate. It's not that hard to convert. So a lot of times you hear me on the films, especially the group rides, I'll say, oh, we're doing 25 miles an hour. But because kilometers is displayed, the software I use does not allow me to display both, or I would. But when there's a default, when I started the channel initially, it was in miles per hour. And then based on some suggestions, because I was going back and forth, I had certain metrics in the metric system, and then I had certain things in Imperial. And one guy suggested, he said, why don't you just do the metric system? And then I made a video on how to easily convert. And in my car, they have both. They have kilometers an hour and miles per hour on the speedometer. You know, I have a German car that I drive, and they have both. So it's like, it just became second nature. So I do everything in the metric system, and then I convert it on the fly to the Imperial system just to accommodate the US audience. But the cycling world reports in the metric system. If you've watched anything from Europe, any cycling race, or read any cycling magazine, you've seen that. And that's the reason. That's what so if young riders on here, we get a lot of riders talking about how do you hook on with a pro team or whatever. They need to learn both. So if they get successful enough to travel overseas to race, then it's already there, you know? It's kind of like Greg LeMond was very popular in France. The main reason was he went there, he didn't change who he was, but he learned the language. He became fluent in French. And I don't know what other languages he picked up. And I think that's really cool, because where I grew up as a kid, our neighbors spoke French from Guinea and the Ivory Coast and Sierra Leone. So we were taught French in school. We were encouraged to learn the language of our neighbors, because there were merchants that would come to sell their goods. And the way we were raised, our culture said that it's always good to make the stranger feel at home. So we would speak to them in their language so they would feel at home, because they were visiting. So when you go overseas or whatever, just even if you get a book that just has the conversational phrases, at least try, versus going to France and expecting everybody to speak to you in English. If you're in France, expect them to speak French. That's where you are. And, you know, so over the years, there has been a lot of friction of people that would go over there with that attitude, like, why don't you speak English? Well, why should they? That's not their language. That's not their first language. They know English. Most of the Europeans know multiple languages. It's us over here that don't want to learn other languages. I've picked up Spanish. I learned a little bit of German, just you know, out of curiosity, because where I live here in Houston, we're close to Mexico. And so a lot of people here are from the South, you know, whether El Salvador or whatever. So you can pick up that if you choose to. And I think it's a good language. I think it should be taught here in schools, because it would make sense to learn Spanish since we're close to people that speak Spanish. This is North America, but the South, the southern continent of America, mostly speaks Spanish. So we need to be taught that, but they don't do that here. So that's the main reason. To make a long story short, I think it just works, and I try to do both. So on the video, sometimes I would say 16 Celsius, and then I give the comparable reading in Fahrenheit. You know, you just need to be in the ballpark. It doesn't need to be exact. You know, once you get the conversions, and you know, you can switch. But I think it's just better to find something that works for the masses, and you kind of go with that. You know, down here in the US, yeah, all the signs are miles per hour. But even when I'm driving, I know that 30 miles per hour, you know, equates to the necessary kilometer, like 80 kilometers is 50. You get the parameters after a while, and you just know it. You know, so it's not that big a deal, but I think it's kind of cool that we're accommodating what most of the world uses. Only the US, Liberia, and another island uses the Imperial system. That's 3 countries out of the whole world. So that's not, yeah. All right, let's see here. Oh yeah, Isaiah says he likes the new EF. It looks a little crazy. Like they took every color, and they said that in the email they sent, some marketing email. They took every color out there and just put it in there. It looks a little crazy, almost like a quilted looking jersey. But yes, it is unique. And that's Rafa. they do things that they like to like go on the edge. So it's a crazy looking jersey, but yeah, it is nice in a way, but it's kind of wild. So yeah, so Isaiah says Primoz, Alaphilippe, Pogacar are saving themselves for the Tour de France. It could be. Yeah, it's hard to do the Giro and the Tour because the competition is so high to where you don't have enough time between the races for your body to kind of rest and absorb all that training. So you can kind of wear yourself out if you try to go for both. I think the last guy to do both was the El Pirata, Marco Pantani, the late, great Marco Pantani. Yeah, so Isaiah says he's looking for Egan Bernal. Bernal's been quiet since his lackluster performance at the last Tour. But he's a young guy, so hopefully he'll mature and get ready. Claude says, happy Friday. I'm at the end of my first month of my first road bike and maybe 2 weeks into riding clipless for the first time. What's your experience with IT band pain? I've never had IT band pain. I made a video about that. I'm not sure if it's on the public video list or the members only. But if you're having pain in your knee, you need to get a fit. You start with that. You shouldn't be having any pain unless the pain was from some injury. But even then, you should not be having pain. Don't ignore it, because knee pains have sidelined many a great cyclist, including one of my favorite, the Badger. Ben Enolt had to pull out of the Tour because of knee pain, one of the Tours. So Claudia, yeah, find a fitter if you're having problems with knee pain, because pain is a symptom that's driven by other things. And most often it is because of an improper fit. So something is causing stress on your joints. And the more you ride, the worse it will get. So don't ignore it, or it will get worse. Max from Czechoslovakia, I assume, or the Czech Republic. I don't know if the names have changed. There's been a lot of changes in Europe, the names of those countries. I think it may have changed. I believe Slovakia is a separate country now, I think, if I remember correctly. I think, is Peter Sagan from Slovakia? I believe so. So yeah. So Bala says, can you explain about double shifting to avoid cadence dropping while shifting gears? Yeah, I've got a video about that. I don't know if it's members only or not. It may not be. It's hard to say. But basically, it's based on the fact that if you watch, when you're riding and you're on the big chain ring and you're in the middle, in the back, okay. If you just drop the gear to, like, let's say you got a 53-39, which is a standard. If you just drop the gear to the 39, what will happen is, because you drop such a drastic change in ratio, your cadence changes beyond your normal range. So you kind of look like you're like a hamster. So to avoid that, before you drop the chain in the front, you want to shift to harder gears, meaning smaller physical cogs. I mean, away from the back, you want to shift at least 2 cogs. If you have it 34, which is a compact, or 36, you may need to shift 2 or 3. But you want to go 1, 2, then drop the gear, then drop it. You don't need to know exactly what those ratios are, but that will keep you in the same range, and then you can decide if you need to continue going out or stay where you are or come in. That's the key. And you got to practice that to where, as you're pedaling, you go in the back 2, which slows your cadence down. But before that can happen, then you go to the small chain ring. The assumption is that your shifters are adjusted correctly so you don't drop a chain. Drop chains will usually occur when you're at an extreme angle, especially under a lot of pressure, like on a climb. You can drop a chain. But it starts with, first of all, to prevent that, you want to make sure that your limit screws and your shifting on the bike is set correctly. I don't use what they call chain catchers and all that stuff. I don't think you need it. I don't drop chains. When the chain drops on my bike, the adjustment is off. And once you set that, it's not a problem. But the key is to just go 1, 2 in the back minimum and then drop it. Practice it on your next ride as you go from big to small. It's the same thing when you go from small to big. So you climb a hill and you crest the hill and then it levels off or it starts a descent. When you go big, a lot of times you want to come up in the back a little bit to keep your cadence from bogging down. Same theory. So it's not something that you have to study the gear ratios per se, but you have to make sure that you remember that big and then to go small in the same thing will only work if the grade changes. So for example, you're riding along in the big chain ring in the middle and the road starts to go up real drastically. In that scenario, you don't need to go in the back to the right. You just drop the chain because the grade has already kicked in or the wind has kicked in and your cadence will stay in the same range. The idea is to be in the same range. It doesn't need to be exact, just so you avoid spinning out whatever gear. Mike Kai Watts, he said, I love my SRAM Force E-Tab, which allows me to automate 2 rear cog changes either way when changing front chainring. Takes the thinking out and so seamless. I've tried those E-Tabs. I'm not sure what SRAM is trying to do. It's a different way of shifting, but I don't think shifting requires thinking anyway. There isn't any thinking going on. The gear gets hard, you go to an easier one. Just like in your car. You slow down for a corner and you're in 3rd gear in a standard shift car, you got to come down. There's no thinking required. Driving a car, it's the same thing. It's kind of like, I've never owned the E-Tab. I've worked on bikes that tap or double tap. You go up or down, you know, but it's kind of like they came up with their own way of shifting. And once you get used to it, it's not that complicated, you know. My issue with SRAM has been a lot of their owners complain about the front derailleur failing on them. So maybe they've improved that. That seemed to be a weakness a few models ago. So hopefully they've gotten that sorted. Michael Mandarino, have you ever tried CD shoes? Any opinion on them? Yes, I have. The CD shoes do not suit my foot, the shape of my foot. CD has higher arches in them. So when I used them, I had to use a footbed that flattened it out. So basically I had to get something to take off the arch in a way. I have flat feet. The shoes that work for me are Shimano, the models that I've tried. Shimano, Lake, Giro shoes, Rafa, they work well for me. The CD shoes, and hopefully they've lightened them up. They just seem heavy. Once I switched to Giro, they was like wearing slippers. I don't know if any of you have tried both brands, but the older CDs used to have this real heavy bottom. I mean, they were tough shoes. They lasted. They're very common. But when I switched to the Giro shoes, I never looked back. So the Giro, Shimano, the Rafa. Right now, I have Giro and Shimano. I love the way they fit my feet. I don't need custom footbeds with them. Just the standard insole that comes works for me because they start out with flat feet, especially the Giro and the Rafa, and they give you these inserts. So if you have a higher arch, they give you inserts that you can add to their insoles. And so for people with flat feet, those are the models that are great. And then Lake shoes, that they have wide toe boxes. The same thing with the Giro. So all of that works well. The shoes that Specialized also did not work for me because the toe boxes seem to be narrower. And so that didn't work for me. So once you find shoe brands that work for you, if you're going to switch, you need to really test it out before you spend your money. Make sure you find a local shop that has a brand that you want to try. Otherwise, it gets expensive to keep trying them. The shoes are not cheap. Melanin in Asia. Welcome, Melanin. It's good morning. That's tomorrow there. So yeah, find, just like saddles, find a saddle you like. I've used all kinds of saddle. I've used the Flight saddle. I've used the Specialized Ramen. I've used the Physique. I think I used the Antares. I didn't like that much. Then I went with the Arione. the one they claim that if you're very flexible, it works for you. They're all pretty decent. But once I got to the SMP dynamic, I just loved everything about it. So once you find a brand that works for you, just kind of stay with that. Doesn't mean it's the only thing you can use, but if you ever needed a change for any reason, then there needs to be a good reason why you're changing. So when I find shoes that work for me, I stay with that brand. I find saddle. If you look at my bikes, all of them have the same brand of saddle. That's one thing about it. If you find a saddle that works for you, stay with that. Same thing with shoes, because when it comes to bike fit, the sole of the shoes vary, the thicknesses. So if you go from brand to brand, they're not going to be the same. It's going to affect your fit. If one shoe is thicker, like back in the day, they had the Karnak shoes. They were real thick. They had a big toe box. I used to like them, but the bottom was really thick. So when you go from that shoe to another shoe, if you have different brands, then your saddle's either too high or too low, depending on whether one is thicker or lower. So once you find what works for you, you kind of stay with it. And a lot of riders do the same. The pros don't mess around with their stuff. I don't care whether it's sponsor or not. They find a brand of saddle they like, they stay with that. They get a bike that's fitted to them. They don't really like to change bikes. If you notice, in a lot of the races, the guys will have a wreck or something. It has to be pretty extreme before they even get on the spare bike. Because even though the dimensions are the same, it's possible that something could be off if you haven't spent time on that bike, even though it's a spare bike that was set up. Now, I'm sure now a lot of them are making sure they ride the spare bike to make sure that it feels right. Because if it doesn't feel right, you're spending 6 hours, there are races between 4 and 6 hours. That's a long time to be on a bike that doesn't fit you just right. So guys are real picky, and they should be, because a wrong fit can cause problems, like the gentleman who just talked about IT band pain. So you can't play with that. Little changes can make a difference when you're cycling for thousands of kilometers. It adds up, So Micah says, yes, I agree. I've been accustomed to mechanical group sets for so long. It's been such a nice feature. I've come to love electronic systems to mechanical. I prefer mechanical personally. I don't see, I ride with guys that have the new, automated systems. I just don't like some of the noises they make. They're fancy. I've tried them at a show, like a bike show. They make a sound when they go from the big to the small chain ring and all that. If you keep up with making sure your battery is charged, and it's not often. There's a guy that arrives at a Mo from time to time. He has the electronic Shimano system, and he says that he can go almost 4 months or so before he needs to charge the battery. So with that length of time, I think they're fine. But if you do forget, we've had a guy on a ride that was stuck in the 13, because once you forget and you have no power, it just sticks in one gear, which is the same thing that would happen to a mechanical system if your cable was broken for some reason. You'd be in one gear. So yeah, meaning your hardest gear. So one ride Mo was in, he rode the small chain ring and like the 12 or so, whatever he was in for most of the ride, So yeah, so just if you keep up with it, they're fine. I have issues with the expense involved. I think they charge too much for the electronic Grupo, especially the parts. When something breaks, the parts are just a bit high. So, that's just a personal thing. Doesn't mean that the new stuff is bad. I just prefer the mechanical stuff. It's easier. I don't have to charge anything. I got enough crap that I hook up. I got my lights and my head unit, all of that. So I want one less thing to be messing with. And so Micah says, yes, it's expensive. Yeah, it's high. I think it's because they're trying to. You have to realize that they spend a lot of money to get these systems, the mechanic, the new electronic shifting stuff. So whatever investments they made to get there, they've got to recoup it. So over time, it will probably get less expensive. But right now, yeah, they're kind of high if you have to replace anything or whatever. And then if you're buying a new bike and you get that in there, it just really pads the price, John Hill is here. Hello, John. Welcome. K Black. Thank you. K Black says, great channel. Thank you, K. We're just sharing what we do here on this channel, and I try to share knowledge as much as possible. It doesn't interfere with the business side of what we're trying to do. So let's see here. Imperceptible said he tried CD, the CD shoes. However, they're heavy and the toe box is really small. They are heavy compared to other shoes. He said, I have wide feet and Lake works perfectly as I like to flex my toes. Expensive though, but good quality. I don't know if Lake is expensive, Imperceptible, compared to other shoes. Shimano got shoes $400 and something, the top stuff. I think that I like Lake. I haven't owned one, but I've read about them. I like the fact that Lake takes care of the wide feet, like you said, the big toe box. Back in the day, we had Karnak. The brand Karnak was well known for a wide toe box. So these narrow shoes that were more common, we finally got some shoes with guys with wide feet. I have what they call medium feet, because when I buy shoes, it says medium, but still, the shoes with narrow feet, if you're spending a lot of time on the bike pedaling, it can really help to have room for your toes so that you don't have any kind of circulation issues on a long ride, because your feet will swell over time. So now we have more choices, you know. Carlos Shabauer, he said, Buenos dias, ¿cómo está? Habla poquito de español. Let's see here. The new SRAM rival. That's their base model. I don't know much about it other than when I did a video here a while back about the different grupos, I mentioned some of the stuff. You know, SRAM is just another player. SRAM components work well with Shimano components. So a lot of times when I'm replacing chains on bikes, I'll use a SRAM chain on the Shimano group set, and you can't tell the difference. I've had problems with the K&M chains jumping around, especially with Campy. They don't work very well. But I don't cross drivetrains. If you got Campy, I like to use the Campagnolo chain. If you got Shimano, you can go with SRAM, and I think that K&M will work well with those as well. But SRAM and Shimano, their components really complement each other really well. You can't go too wrong trying to mix that stuff. The rival is probably like an entry-level group set because they've got, you know, different price ranges, of course. The performance and the quality will be different, of course. All of them have that, you know. Campagnolo trying to streamline their stuff. You know. Michael, no, Paul uses Shimano. Paul has Shimano stuff on his bike. Paul, whatever came with the frames when he got them, he just left them on there. We don't spend a lot of money on stuff. They all work pretty well. You know, Shimano 105 is not going to stop you from putting down the power. If you got the power, you got the power. The nicest stuff just works well, you know. So if you can afford it and you want to do that, no. So we spend more funds on kit, and we make sure, of course, we know our bike's dialed in, but really the kit, because your body is what slows you down. Remember, when you ride a bike, you're lifting. It's kind of like lifting weights. There's a lot of drag from the wind that's hitting your body. So if you don't have a kit that's streamlined and you're not fitted to your bike, you will catch a lot of wind. You will work a lot harder. You're carrying more load than the next rider who is fitted better, that can lower his torso. You don't have to be super flat. You don't have to have a super flat back to be aerodynamic. You just have to close that hole in front reasonably for your body shape. And you can feel when you're out there, you can feel the wind moving around you when you hit a certain position. So you need to have a fit to where you can lower your torso comfortably, still be able to breathe and put out power. Fit and your kit. That's where you start. Then the next thing would be a nice pair of wheels, because that's an upgrade you feel immediately. You know, but as far as a group set, yeah, the shifting might be nicer, but once you've done shifting, then what? You got to ride, right? You know, so I don't think you need to go out of your way for all this stuff. Like a lot of guys will go, oh, I want the lightest this, the lightest that, unless you're a professional climbing a mountain. And if you are, the team will provide you the lightest components within their regulations. But for the most part, it doesn't make that big of a difference. You guys have seen me ride my Colnago with those guys with their $3,000 wheels and ride up to somebody riding on. I don't think about it. I just put the power down and go. I work as hard as I need to for the moment. That's the whole point. So don't get too hung up on stuff. Get things that are durable, get good quality so you don't have to be messing with it, so you can have time to ride. Get the best thing you can afford. Don't get the cheapest stuff necessarily trying to save dollars when it's going to cost you time off the bike because they break or don't work well. So I would much rather buy a used high quality thing than a new cheaply made stuff. And I say cheap, I'm not talking about the price. I'm talking about the quality of the product. Poorly made stuff will just cost you headaches. And sometimes, depending on whether they're wheels or whatever, they break on you. I was on a ride a few years ago with the UMC guys, and a guy's pedal axle snapped. I've never seen that happen before that time in all the riding and racing I've done. And the metal looked gray on the inside, almost like it wasn't real steel, if you know what I mean. It looked gray. And it was like, I don't know where he got it. And this was the same guy. His name was Mustard. It was the same guy who got some wheels from China for $400, and they put the name Zip on it, and then they drew the dimples on the wheel. And he was touting what a deal it was. And so when he broke that pedal, I was like, I guess it wasn't because he crashed. Because you're riding, and he stepped, and the pedal the axle snapped, and piece of it stayed in the crank. So he hit the pavement hard right next to us. It was in the neighborhood area. So, there were no cars or anything, but he hit the deck. It ended his ride. He had to stop and call for a ride. His knees were all scuffed up. I'm using that as an example was whatever he saved on those cheaply made pedals, is it worth his health or injuring himself? He could have injured himself seriously. So then he had those $400 wheels, and every time he would ride, they were made out of carbon. You could see the dimples were painted on them, but the people put Zip on there. We knew they weren't Zip wheels, and he knew too. He got them from Alibaba somewhere. And so every ride, there was a twing, twing, like a metallic noise intermittently throughout the ride. When these wheels are going to explode. That's what I'm getting at. Get good quality stuff. Even if you get them used on eBay, OfferUp, wherever, get the stuff that's branded. There's a reason they're branded. Those guys test their stuff. I mean, it doesn't mean their stuff don't break, but R&D is there. It doesn't matter where it's made. What matters is what company was behind it. Like, for example, you get an iPhone that says designed in California, well, made in China. Well, they have their what I call QC people or whatever. Somebody's monitoring the manufacturing of that. So they're on top of that. But if it's just some firm, whether it's Portugal or wherever, that's just making something, and they don't have the what I call gumption to put their own brand on it. If somebody is making something and copying the name of a brand and putting it on there, it can't be that good. Because if it were good, they would give it their own brand. And then it would have something to stand behind, like their own testing or whatever else. That's why I don't like copies. There's no point to it. Why get a copy when you can get the real thing? You only live once. So live well. Don't take those kind of risks. They're not worth it. We see a lot of people with copies around, and they have all kinds of issues. Just a lot of little niggling issues. So they can't really enjoy the stuff. Why spend $20 4 times when you can spend $80 one time and be done? So anyway, let's see here. Shani, welcome. So Imperceptible, talking about used stuff. What's your take on buying X-Pro bikes? That's no problem with that. I mean, if you're buying carbon bikes, just make sure you get the carbon. They have people that will use ultrasound and look at the carbon fibers on the frame to make sure it hasn't been compromised, because the pros are hard on their bikes if you're buying X-Pro bikes. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. If you get a good copy, a lot of these guys will ride a bike for a little while, maybe they're not happy, then they jump on another one. And, a lot of the pros really don't keep all their bikes. They get too many frames to keep them. It wouldn't be practical. They give them away to people they know or whatever. They may just keep 1 or 2 for training or something. But if they're changing teams and changing frames, as they get frames that they like that fit them better, their choices of frames are based on what fit them best. All the frames are going to feel different. Like when I ride the Colnago, that's a slightly different feel because it's steel and it just handles differently. Right now, it's like my blue bike and my orange bike, I prefer their feel, but the Colnago is just so much more comfortable. So when I'm doing really long training rides, I take the Colnago, especially when I'm riding solo. That's why you see it on the trainer. I put a spare wheel on there just to spin in the morning when I get up and I'm very busy, just to stay loose. But I ride my Colnago a lot, especially when I ride solo. That steel fork just absorbs everything. Yeah, it's not the lightest fork. I mean, it's heavier than a carbon fork would have been, but I chose to go for that look. And I wanted the full retro thing. So yeah, nothing's wrong with that. I mean, just carbon frames, buying any used carbon frame, I think you need to get it checked to make sure it hasn't been in a crash that you can't see any kind of issues, because that can happen. Metal frames, you don't have to worry about it because they bend when they get to their limits. Carbon will snap. And then sometimes carbon can have a damage that you can't see. And then you have a catastrophic break or something. So just be cautious for that. Let's see here. Victor P, which pedal are better, Shimano or Speed Play? It's hard to say. There's no such thing as better. It's a matter of what you prefer. I have not used the Speed Play pedals, but the people who have, they like the level of adjustment that's available. They claim that you have like an infinite adjustability. Well, there are negatives to that. If you have too much adjustability, I mean, how far do you need to go? Once the pedal's set, it's set up. I've only used the standard, clipless pedals. I've used Look and I've used Shimano. I prefer the Shimano pedals versus the Look pedals because the platform is wider. I just like that. And that's what I use. And the pedals pretty much last forever. I mean, unless you crash, hang up the pedals, they just work. And it doesn't matter whether you get Ultegra or whatever. I mean, as you go up, it's lighter, better materials. That's pretty much what you're paying for. And, they have 105. Shimano makes really good stuff. It just works like a Timex. You just get on it, you just use them. A lot of their stuff, when they do break, there's very little repairing going on. It's better to just replace them. Whereas with it's too bad Campy did not go into the pedal area deeply. They made a few, but they kind of got away from it, which I'm sure they had their reasons. But Speedplay has just recently improved the pedal. I think they got a new owner. I think someone bought them out. I don't know which company, but I saw an article on Cycling Weekly. They have a new owner of the company, and they've made some changes to the style of the spindle that you clip into. They've lightened it up a little bit, and they've made the cleat. Well, the pedal itself, actually, I wouldn't call it. The pedal attaches to the shoe for Speedplay. That's what you walk on. They've made that more durable because they had a tendency to wear more. And so they've improved them quite a bit. But it's just a matter of personal preference. He said Wahoo bought Speedplay. Yeah, they've really cleaned the body up. They put more metal where they had plastic on that spindle because the pedal is what's on your shoe. And supposedly they're more durable. It was on Cycling Weekly, a little article that it talked about that. So they're nice to have. The people who like them really love them. You can get in on both sides. Once you get used to the other pedals, like my Shimano pedals, I don't even have to look to clip in because they hold their position. You just kind of touch them and they go in. So, but the Speedplay, you don't have to be on a particular side. I mean, it's a circle. And the pedal itself is under the shoe is bigger. You end up walking on it, and so it does require a little more care, or at least the older model. You have to lube them, strategically, periodically, to extend the life. And I think they had a tendency to wear if you didn't take care of them properly. So everything has its caveats. But the people who like Speedplay, they really like Speedplay. And I guess maybe if I tried it, I would have more definitive things to say about it. But the pedal system I have works fine. So you have to be cautious changing your attachment points. It's not like getting a new handlebar that you can set with the same angle. So once you find something that works for you, there has to be a good reason why you want to go with something else. Because if you're going to change your pedal system, it's going to affect your fit, your saddle height, all of that. Fore aft may get affected. So you don't do that on a whim. So Larry says Wahoo or Speedplay have a new power meter built in one of their models. Yeah, the one the guy reviewed did not have the power meter. I think he mentioned they've hinted at that coming. I don't think it had been released. And this was like something a week or so ago. That's a Cycling Weekly, the magazine, has a monthly video they put out where they talk about all the new stuff in cycling. And I try to keep up with that. So it had not been released. They're planning on putting a power meter in there. I don't know if it's released yet. My experience with power meters continue to be the same. They all got their issues. The power meter on the blue bike up there last week just stayed on 0. I don't know why. It just stayed on 0 for a lot of the ride. If you guys saw the film, it was just 0, then go to 25, 75. I was riding into the wind doing at least 180, 200 watts. I can tell. That's usually the range for the effort I was putting out. It was nowhere near there. Couldn't figure out why. So I got it home, rebooted it. Now it's fine. They all got their issues. They all have, the same thing with the Garmin pedal power meter. The older model, they had plastic threads that you'd screw in the cap for the battery. And over time, it would wear because you got metal going into plastic. And then it was letting moisture in there. So some of the users experience 3,000 watt spikes, I mean, it's good for your ego, but so those kind of things. So the new one, the Rally that they've released, is metal threads inside the body of the pedal where the battery sits. And the cap is metal. So it's metal to metal. So hopefully that will solve the problem. So one of the things that was discussed on the Cycling Weekly monthly video about all the new technology. So don't buy a power meter expecting it to be perfect. Look for consistency. That's what matters. When they are working, if they're consistent, then you can use them as a tool. The exact numbers doesn't really matter as long as it's every time you do the same effort, it's there. And that's what you look for. When they have issues, usually they can be addressed, sometimes with a firmware update and so forth, because you got a lot of computation going on in there. So they're very complicated things when you think about them that they've been able to accomplish. I just have a problem with the price point on the Rally pedals right now. It's about $1,100. Well, you got power meters at $300-400 now, so yeah, so they're almost 3 times above the market. Kind of like the SRAM guys. They're high up there. So I don't know how much of that they'll sell, even though they finally provided a platform body that works for Shimano cleats, because I wasn't willing to give that up because my contact where I sit, where my feet are and my hands is the critical. That's why you see people shaking their hands on the bike or whatever. When one's off, you have other issues. If somebody's shaking their hands, you might think, oh, it's the bar. No. It can come from that saddle not being balanced. So they're putting weight here. Or it can come from the feet. They're trying to cheat. So you have to put weight here to move that foot that's bothering you. Something's wrong with that setup. So you time, that area that you're waiting gets numbed. And then you got to get the circulation back. So when someone shakes their hand, nobody can tell you, oh, yeah, that's because that bar. No, it could be any number of things that's causing that symptom. So people always say, you got to revisit your fit. You guys saw the guy on the ride 2 weeks ago doing like this, and then we're going up the hill, and he basically left the bike and did like that. And he's not a new rider. I could tell just by looking at him, he didn't just start cycling. So he's been living with that. So this fit thing is not just new riders that don't know about it. There's a lot of riders who ride for years and never get a fit. And then this thing, everybody else is uncomfortable, but no, they're not. Just remember that. So it's kind of funny to me when I see that, but you should not be uncomfortable. You should not be riding in discomfort. Let's see. SRAM bought, Michael Mandarina just says SRAM bought the time pedal business. Yeah, I don't know. The time pedal, I never tried it. It was popular when I raced in the 90s. I don't know how that's going to pan out. They're not that common. Everything about it was different. It had a metal cleat. It was a different attachment system. Some people liked them back there, but it just didn't take off. They're not that mainstream. So maybe I'm sure they have their reason. Robbie Udafasa. He said he's just done 200-kilometer ride under 11 hours yesterday. I wish I can take my legs off. Well, go soak in a tub, put some Epsom salts in there, or get a massage. That will help you recover. Yeah. Robbie says from Indonesia. Well, welcome to the channel. You don't need to take your legs off. Actually, riding long is good. All the top champions, Fausto Coppi, the former champions, they would ride long, but they recovered properly. The joke was they would ride long, and then the next day they'd be in the forest doing yoga. That was the joke, but that's probably what they did. You do a long ride, it's actually good for your system. You build those capillaries. That's the kind of riding I like to do, because it really gives you what I call real strength. You build a strong diesel engine, and when it's time to go hard, you can do it. Larry says, you're right. I did an Imperial Century yesterday. First time my hands felt okay because I adjusted the level of the saddle. Yeah, you took the weight off your hands. I get a lot of people coming in here for fits. I do right here. And the first thing I do is I put a level on, get the bike mounted. And more often than not, it's up. Or, well, it's like 50-50. It's either up or it's tilted down. A lot of times when it's tilted down, they're trying to accommodate a high saddle. Saddle too high, so it was pressing up on them. So they tilted it down and it felt better. Forgetting that gravity causes them to slide to the bars. So what happened is where they rest on the tops, because they end up, when you're not comfortable back there, you spend more time on the tops. The tape on both sides of the corners of the bars were chewed up with all that weight on there. I'm basically wearing a hole on the bar tape. And so the first thing I do is get the saddle height right and then level it to start, and then watch them pedal. And as I increase the resistance to see, because some people have imbalances to where you have to accommodate it by either tilting the saddle a little down, within, I don't go below more than 3 degrees, but you have to accommodate each person. But more often than not, a level saddle is where you start with, and then you kind of work. Once you get that saddle position correct, then everything else is easier. But it's a combination of the saddle and your feet. You can't neglect that. If the cleat's not right on the shoe, it will pull you away from where you should be. So you need to make sure you get that. All right, let's see here. Shani D, how often should one be fitted? I know you should initially, but what about after that, once per year or every other year? Like everything, Shani, you should only deal with it if you're having problems. So I don't like to tell people that you need annual fits. I mean, some people push that. If you come and you get fitted and everything feels good and you're riding, and as you ride and you put more Ks in, you start having another problem with those contact areas, then you contact your fitter and you say, so a lot of times what I do is I try to get people dialed in. A lot of people, if you're trying to lose weight or whatever, I don't lower you to where you should be initially. So I explain to them that go ride your bike for a month, because a lot of people come and get fit, then they put the bike in the garage. What's the point of getting fitted? You got to go ride your bike. So I have like 30-day follow-up from all my clients that come in. So that way they're not spending additional monies to tweak things. But in your case, say you ride for a year and you start having like what they call hot foot, or your toes are going to sleep or whatever else. It could be a number of things causing it. So then You're having a problem that needs to be addressed. If you have a fitter that you're comfortable with, it's always good to go back to the same fitter because he's got your history. And he should have kept, I keep all my people in a database, all their measurements, whatever little quirks they have. Because then it's just a tweak because he has a reference and he can just continue to make these incremental adjustments. Because you may have lost some weight or you know, your flexibility kicked in and maybe you need the bars a little lower because you can tolerate it now. A lot of the guys who come in, we're out of shape, we got bellies. And so maybe that has gone down. And so now he can get lower. So he wants the bars a little tilted, you know, towards him and down. You can kind of tweak that because the person can handle it at that point. So only get a fit if you're having an issue that you want to address. Oh, I want to be a little more aero or something like that. How can I get lower and not lose power? That's when you go and you get a fit. That's why you need somebody who knows fit cycling so that they can, because some of them, you know, you don't want somebody to just make changes because, oh, I want to get lower. You may already be low enough for you because your back doesn't have to be 90 degrees to be aerodynamic. I said that earlier in here. So you need a fitter who knows what they're doing to be able to tell you, okay, we've done enough here. This is what we need to do to really get you going. You know, but the way I do my fits for the most part, unless you got an inherent problem, once I dial you in, you're pretty close to optimal because I look at what your body can tolerate. So unless your body changes dramatically, we're not going to be doing any major changes. It's the little changes that make the difference, you know, because you have to give me the proper feedback because I can't feel for you, but I can watch you and know when your bike fits you well. Just remember that. So don't worry so much about annual fit versus whatever. If your bike is comfortable, you don't need to do anything. If you've never had a fit and you're comfortable, then I guess you're fine. That's possible too. But if you're having problems, and I'm going to say this because more than 90% of the people that show up for fit that are non-competitive people come because there's a pain somewhere. And that's unfortunate. A lot of the competitive riders come because they understand the significance of fit. They come and get it whether they're having pains or not. They get that dialed in and then they go to do their events. But people who don't compete only show up for the most part because this hurts, that hurts. That's when they show up. That's what I see. And that's okay if that's what drives it. So you got to keep that in mind. So yeah, you don't have a problem. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Larry Graham, I was one of those guys who used to shake my hands. Yeah, we get them. I mean, it happens all the time. You guys saw him 2 weeks ago. I see them all the time. I see it every week. The same people we ride with every week. The problem hasn't gone away. But believe it or not, they're just not aware that it's not the norm. They just live with it. I see it and I just smile. You know, because I get this a lot. You guys have probably seen the comment. What is your camera attached to? It's in my hand. What do you mean it's in your hand? I'm holding the camera. The camera, I'm going to take this off. I want to show you guys. The camera is not on it, but I want to show you what we hold the camera with. We'll take this off, this microphone off. It's connected to this computer so I can get the thing. I want to show something about fit. Take this off, put it right here. The camera is attached to this. It's a GoPro. This is sold by GoPro. That's just a little stick. It has a tripod. Sometimes when I'm out and I want to put the camera down and film myself doing something, this telescopes. Okay, it's just a GoPro accessory. Like this. As we ride, this is in our hands. And the bar is there. So we're like this. You know how you hold your brake hoods? It just basically makes the bar a fatter bar. But because we're fitted, we don't need, I hope this mic is working. I've got it on the table. Let me put it back on my jersey. Because we're fitted correctly, there's no weight on our hands. So what ends up happening is I'm holding it like this. Camera's attached here. If I want to film the person behind me, look at my fingers. I turn it around like this. Or we do this, put it in this hand like this. And it's just filming back there. Now I want to film in front. I just spin it around while I'm riding, resting on the brake hood. You know how right here rests on the brake hoods? This is sitting here like that, and that's on the brake hoods. It does not interfere with braking or any of your fingers. So what we're doing when we're riding really hard, the camera's in the left hand because we do more shifting here. You guys know that. Okay, it's on the big chain ring. You don't need to do much. And sometimes you've seen the camera flip like this. If Paul's holding it here and we come to a hill and he needs to go to the big chain ring, then he'll just flip to the big chain ring and the camera will twitch like this. But it's just right here like this. This is on the brake hoods. This is just sitting here now. The camera is like this, so it doesn't go anywhere. It just rests on top of your thumb. And people are like, how can you do that? How can we not do that? It's nothing. This is just in your hand, and this wraps around the rest of your fingers wrap around the brake hood. You use your fingers as you wish. But if you're not fitted and you got all your weight on your hands, you can't do what I just showed you. And that's why we get all those comments, because most of them have so much weight on the bars, they can't even hold a banana. I just wanted to show you that. The benefits of being fitted. So I can change a jersey while riding. Of course, you know, the wind conditions will be right. What I mean, hands-free riding. I can put on a jacket while riding. I can put on a vest. I can take off a vest, fold it up, put it in my pocket without stopping. You see the pros do it. You should be able to do that. When your bike fits you, you control the bike with your hips and your feet. You don't need your hands that much. You know, if it's gusting wind, I won't do that. But if I'm going directly into the wind and there's not much wind, yes, you can change. You can do whatever. That's the joy of it. That's the thing about cycling. But people who are not fitted to their bike, haven't ridden enough to be comfortable, it eludes them. How can you do that? You know, I don't have to stop to take off stuff in the winter. Unzip it, take it off, fold it, stick it. A lot of times I'll stick it under here, inside my bib. You just go inside in the small of the back, so I save my pocket. All of that. But all of that comes from knowing the significance of your bike being an extension of your body. And when it is, you can do whatever. You know, when I'm eating, I don't eat the whole bar at once. I'll break it up and I'll hold it in my hand, take a mouthful, put it in there, hold the rest, still riding, and then you throw them in. So your mouth is not completely full. So you can breathe while you're riding. So just know that. It's not the norm. There's no reason for you to be uncomfortable. Let's see here. Sudden Vegan Marcus Chestnut. Greetings to everyone. Welcome, Marcus. I haven't seen Marcus in a while. Marcus is one of our channel members. Thanks for supporting the channel, Marcus. Dave 101 Keith. Do you level different saddle brands differently? No, Dave. Level is level. So you just place your level on top of the saddle, but make sure your floor is level, because some floors are not level. And if your floor is not level, check the floor, see where the bubbles should be for your floor, and set the saddle accordingly. You shouldn't have to label a level a different brand differently. I avoid saddles that are completely flat or, I guess, cave. I like saddles that dip, because most people, everybody really, when you get into drops, your hips roll. That's why most saddles have that little dip. And those are more pronounced on S&P brand. It doesn't matter what model you get. I think they did more research studying the human pelvis, because you sit on your pelvic bone, the ischial-pubic rhombus. So you need that little dip so that your soft tissue has a place when you roll to minimize the pressure on you under there. That's why people tend to lower the saddle, this tilt like that, when it's too high. And they think that a very high saddle looks really cool. Looks not important. It's how it feels, so you can generate power. Your saddle should be in the right spot to where when you're riding, it's just there. It just barely touches you. In fact, when you start to ride hard, you transfer the weight from your saddle to the pedals. And the saddle just kind of taps you a little bit as it hits the imperfections in the road. It's just a beauty to watch. a well-fitted rider ride the bike. It's beautiful. You know, it's just very comfortable. And, you know, people ask, how can you ride 6-7 hours? Yeah, it's comfortable. I can ride 12 hours. Doesn't matter. Because nothing hurts. You know, everything works. You know, but if you're having little pains, don't ignore them, because you'll get them at different times. You know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 2 hours, whatever. The body puts up with a lot. But don't ignore it because it happened late in the ride. You shouldn't be uncomfortable other than the normal soreness from working out. Do you have any idea about old time trial bike geometry? I want to buy one, but I don't know what old geometry work because the modern one is so different. Well, regardless of the geometry, you're still going to sit on the bike in a position that will allow you to generate power, have more aggressive geometry, because you roll forward anyway. So you don't stuff. A lot of the road riders use the time trial bikes for the time trial. They prefer their road frames. It's a different setup, a different feel, but you're in a different position. You know, you're forward, and that's why they have a limit to how far, you know, the saddle has to, I think, 5 centimeters behind the bottom bracket. They have limits to where people don't get too crazy with the position. So find out, get a bike sizing done. We offer that. I'm sure many other fitters offer that. Get a bike sizing done so you know before you buy any kind of bike. Shani says her toes go to sleep on the outside edges of her feet. It could be many different things. It could be the shoe. It could be where your cleat is positioned under that shoe. So yes, you need to look at your fit. You need to look at where the cleat is positioned on the shoe to make sure it's on the widest part of your foot. That will definitely cause that. Or you can also look at the saddle height. So it sounds like you need your fit looked at, because those things are addressed in a fit. Robbie Yuda Fasa, fun question. What's your cycling guilty pleasure? I'm not guilty of anything. Guilt and shame are useless emotions. There was somebody on, what's his name? Ollie. We're talking about mirrors we're commenting after the last ride Saturday. And he said that his birthday was coming up. Somebody asked, I think he was the one that asked about the mirror that was on the bike. He saw it in the film, the mirror on my bar end, the Bethune mirror. And then he said his birthday was coming, he didn't want one. And I kind of chuckled. Why are you waiting for your birthday to get a mirror? It's not a car. You know, just get it if you want to get it. You don't need a reason to get a mirror for your bike. You know, it's not a big expenditure. You know, so I just kind of chuckle. So no, I don't have guilty pleasures. You get up every day, you work, you make the money. Who are you making it for? Spend it on yourself. That's why you work and put up with all kinds of crap at some jobs. K Black, LOL, I caught hot foot going without socks this week. It wasn't because of you going without socks. All the socks do several things. They cushion your feet against abrasion, against the shoe, the different surfaces. They absorb the moisture from your perspiration. Your feet sweat. They're part of your body. You got skin on them. All that moisture that it didn't absorb, guess what? It went into your shoe. Your shoe's going to smell. So you're going to either have to clean it or use odor eaters or whatever. That's the benefit of socks. So it's not just the odor that you're keeping off of your shoe by allowing the socks to absorb your perspiration, but it's also the protection of your skin from chafing. The reason why triathletes don't wear socks is because of their transitions. You know, they're coming out of the pool and they're running, so they don't have the time. They're trying to keep whatever advantage they have from swimming, getting on the bike, and then they do that. But I don't know if they train like that all the time necessarily. But I don't ride without socks because it just feels better, and it's easier to wash my socks than my shoes to get that odor. Just keep that in mind. So the issue with that you had with hot foot, it's not because of the socks. There's pressure on your foot from your position on that bike. Like I explained for Shani's question about her foot going to sleep, pressure's being applied in a spot on your foot that your foot doesn't like. So you need to look at your fit, get some help to get that fit addressed. If the cleat's in the wrong spot or your saddle's a bit high, sometimes we have a nerve that runs under us, under the leg, It's a big nerve. And if it gets pinched by the saddle, yeah, it can cause numbness in your foot. So many things can cause these symptoms. And that's why you've got to address it from scratch. So most fitters would say, we just need to look at the whole fit, because it's just easier to make sure your saddle's fine, it's level, the fore aft is correct, you're sitting correctly. Now I can look at, okay, why is your foot getting hot? I can look at the pedal position, the tilt and all that. It's a science, you know, so don't disregard that. That's a reason why the pros get a fit. They know. And before they become pros, they get a fit. Nowadays, in the amateur ranks, yeah, they get a fit, because you would be uncomfortable if you didn't. All right, let's see here. We're going to be wrapping up soon. Victor P, are those mirrors on your bike? Yeah, I just mentioned that, Victor. I've got a mirror on this is one on each bike in the bar end. It's made by Bretud. It's a French style mirror. I like it because it's really tiny and it basically disappears. It's very functional. They're neat, like jewelry for the bike. Let's see here. Shani says she's too clumsy to do all that while riding. Well, Shani, I don't think it's because you're clumsy. I think it's because that bike doesn't fit you. If I take the word clumsy and apply it to any other cyclist, I picture a cyclist that is riding a bike that is either too big for him or her or too small for him or her. If the bike is too small for you, it feels like you're riding a skateboard. If the bike is too big, it's like it's unwieldy. When the bike fits you, you don't look clumsy. And the negative to that, as far as the other road users, is because experienced riders look so smooth, these morons think they can pass right by your elbow. Because when a cyclist is riding crazy like that, they stay the heck away. I just wanted to point that out. You are not clumsy. Have the bike set up correctly so that you can really get your riding skill tuned. So Larry Graham said, thanks for doing the camera grip demo. I wondered how you passed up the camera so easily. Yeah, what we do is, so let's say, for example, like the one we did in the last video where we're doing the 2-man rotation. So let's say he's riding, it's in his left hand. This is what we do. I'm going to turn this side. You see how this sits like this between my finger? This finger is on the brake hood like that, so that we don't get like that. We just slip this, and we can make this longer and hold it like that if we choose to. I just want to show you that. That's why I like this. So then you put this finger on your brake hood. It's not rattling. And this here is on the brake hood, and it just rests. So we don't think about it. It just sits there. And so when I want to spin it, I just do this. But when he's holding it like that and he rides, it's on his left hand. As he comes by me, I just grab the camera out of his hand. I just lift it out of there. But I lifted to where my hand's not in the lens, and you see this little cupping. If you looked at some of the picture, you would see the camera like a circle. I just grab it out of his hands and keep the filming going and then transfer it in my hand. It's easy. There's a lot more interesting things or more difficult things I've done on a bicycle. For example, in the winter, we wear leg warmers. I can take off my leg warmers without stopping. I unclip one leg, roll it down, slip it over the shoe, roll it up, put it up. Same thing with this one. You can do all of that. You know, you check for traffic and you do whatever. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do it. If your bike fits you, you should be able to do anything. During the races, we'd pee on the bike. Not the most comfortable way to pee, but you probably have seen it. Well, one guy will hold your saddle for you and you pee because you don't want to get left behind by the pack and have to chase. You know, it's not yeah, you can, it's hard to relax, but you can do, there's a lot more interesting you can do on the bike than that. But that all comes from you being one with your bicycle. You develop your skill. You start out with a good fit and you develop the skill of knowing what that bike is doing, like I talked about in the rain. You get one with a bike, you don't have to worry about it. So that's why you see me following these guys, like the guy who was doing his hands like that. I don't care what he's doing. I know what I do. If he falls in front of me, I know how to get out of there. If I have to, I can jump the bike over him. You know, so those are the things that you develop by just riding all the time. And you don't need to panic. Because when you panic, you freeze. Even in your car, if somebody did something while you were driving and you froze, you wouldn't be able to steer. So you really have to think when stuff happens as opposed to panicking. You think, okay, what do? Do I accelerate out of here? Car or bike, doesn't matter. A lot of times you don't need to hit the brakes in your car to get out of trouble. You accelerate out of there. But you got to be thinking, what do I do? And that's the reason why when we ride, all of us, you see us, one rider's on this side like this, somebody's here like this, so we can see what's coming. So when something happens, then everybody, or you come to the light, everybody just, so you don't have to lock up the brakes, you just slow down or whatever. So when stuff happens, you get around it. It's the same thing the pros do. Now, there are instances where something happens right in front of you, man, or whatever. I don't want any other fabric because this is more apt to slide on asphalt than anything else. That's the reason we're wearing this stuff. It's not just for show. You hit the deck and the Lycra is like skin. So before it gets to your skin, you give up some Lycra. You see the pros, they have a crash and you see a big red welt. The Lycra is gone. As bad as that looks, it would have been worse if they didn't have Lycra. So the Lycra saves some skin. So don't think it's something like, oh, I'm just going to wear this cotton short or whatever. Forget that. I put on these bad boys every time I get on the bike. I cover my head. I don't cover my head because of cars. If any of you played rugby or football, in American football, they call it. If you're ever tackled and you hit the ground, your body hits, then what happens? The head. Your head always hits. That's why it makes sense to wear a helmet. So I see cyclists out there wearing a fancy cap, all those painted cycling cap. Yeah, it looks cool and everything. But if you ever fall, and I see, believe it or not, in this country, well, in this state anyway, I don't know everywhere in the US, you don't have to wear a motorcycle helmet if you're over 18, I believe. And you're not required. So sometimes for a while you were, and then they fought against it and they changed the law. Well, do you need a law to tell you to protect your head if you have any kind of brain that's worth saving when you're moving at 60 miles an hour or 70 miles per hour, like, 120 kilometers an hour? Do you need somebody to tell you to protect your head? Because if you were to fall, even by yourself at that speed, what do you think is going to happen? You become a vegetable. They walk right around talking about all that civil rights. Don't tell me what to do. Yeah, but then when they become vegetables, people have to foot the bill to take care of them. That kind of crap. That's what I'm talking about. It's kind of like you don't need laws to do what makes sense. Cover your head. I don't care if you're going right around the corner. Cover your head. Because if you hit a pothole or a squirrel cuts in front of you, whatever, and you fall, most times your head will end up hitting the ground. That's just the last thing that hits, the whiplash motion. Football players, that's why they wear helmets. It's not just for, to stop them from going head to head. Of course, the dangers involved, but it's really to protect their heads, because when they're tackled, you see these guys dislocate their shoulders and whatever playing football. They're not riding a bike, but they're generating serious forces. And they get hit and slammed into the ground, things get out of whack. So there's a lot of forces being generated. So when you're doing 15 miles an hour on a bicycle, you're doing almost 4 or 5 times, you're going as 4 or 5 times as fast as walking, and you fall, you can do some damage. You can leave skin or whatever. So protect yourself. I don't get on my bike without stuff like this and my helmet, minimum. Because then if this jersey tears, it's better than, that's less skin. So just know that every time you see a professional rider that the whole chunk of the hip is exposed, yeah, as bad as it looked, it would have been worse if that Lycra wasn't there. That's why they use Lycra. You've seen that in the rain, they hit the deck and they're sliding. It's because of this fabric. So they didn't just pick it because of crazy stuff. They know what they're doing. And they put some of them doing polyester and elastane now, like this one. Some of them doing carbon fiber and different things. They're sorting. They're working on different things. But that's to protect us. Some of you may remember the late Fabio Casatelli. He used to ride for the Motorola team. Had a very promising career. He fell, I think it was 97 or 98, because when Lance won the Tour in 99, I think he dedicated it to him. Yeah, he fell down a mountain pass and hit his head on one of those little, they have these little blocks on the side of the mountain. And that was back in the day when they weren't required to wear a helmet. And he died, unfortunately. So there was no car involved, just coming down, had a crash. And when you're moving that fast, your body keeps moving at that speed. You know, we get those bikes going pretty fast. You know, we get the 35 miles an hour sometimes, you know, 50 something K. It's fast. So yeah, so I definitely protect myself, and just, that's all you can, that's what you should do. It just makes sense, even though it's not required. We are not required to wear helmets by law. I wear it because it makes sense. I don't need no law from some average Joe to do what makes sense. So I don't know how I got off on that, but every time you go out, protect yourself, cover your head, put on your cycling stuff. There's a reason for it. All right, let's see here. Let's wrap this up. Larry said, I just received the B&M mirror today. So much better having a real glass mirror over a plastic. Yep. Yeah, the glass mirror is just like in your car. I love it. Yeah, Leonard wants to know. Yeah, I'll try my best to follow the Giro. I don't know if NBC will carry it. We don't usually get them here. Then what I try to do is I try to find it on some European sites. So yeah, I do my best to keep up with it. Melanin, not wearing a helmet shouldn't be. Plus, there are nice helmets out there. Yeah, that's no excuse. It just makes sense. You know, it's just, there's no reason. I mean, you know, I see people not wearing it, and that's fine. They have the right to do that, but you know, it's not. It just doesn't make sense. Why not? You know, it's like it keeps you safe. You can fall at any time on a bicycle. Doesn't matter. You know, you get a lot of things with riding in the rain, and people say, "Oh, it's slippery out there." Yeah, everybody knows it's slippery when wet. What's the point of telling me it's slippery when it's wet? We know that. Big deal. You know, that's not news. You can fall when it's dry. You can fall when it's wet. You can fall from inattention, hitting a crack in the road. Yeah, there's so many things. It can happen. It's not a maybe. So you have to just be ready just in case it happens. And you don't need to be going fast. In fact, the slow falls are actually worse for cyclists because you hit so hard with the slow falls that you end up breaking stuff. The spectacular crashes where you're sliding all over the place are usually not as damaging to the body because all that force is dissipated. You know, but those are little simple things where you just fall and you end up dislocating shoulders and pushing it out of whack. You know, I had that happen to me when I used to compete, and the scar is still there. It hit back here, and this bone came forward and rested right here. It was painful. I ended up pushing it back myself because it hurt so much. You know, it took 12 weeks to heal. I didn't need surgery, but it happens. You know, but I don't know how I got into that. It happens, but it doesn't happen that often, and you can avoid that, prevent that by working on your skills every time you ride. Then you can relax, you know, because if you know how to handle the bike, you don't worry so much about it, you know. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll be in touch. You guys stay safe out there. I don't know what we're doing tomorrow. We may just do something solo or whatever. I don't know, because I had the whole week off. We'll probably just hook on to those guys for a little bit, but we're going to get some clips. It's supposed to be a fair day. There's no rain. So I'm a little bummed because I kind of want another rainy ride. So hopefully we'll get some rain soon. Okay, so you guys stay safe, be cool, and take care of yourselves out there.